Excited to be here today with Gerardo Soto, who is VP of Media and Sports Marketing at Lowe's. And it is obviously a very exciting time for soccer, although given that we're sitting here in France, I feel like I should call it football. But it is an exciting time for soccer. There's a lot of excitement around the world and definitely, especially in the US right now around soccer. And Gerardo has been leading an expansion for Lowe's into marketing through soccer. So we're going to talk about some of those initiatives, everything from, a partnership with the most recognizable athlete on the planet to some great work at the grassroots level that's impacting families and communities across the U.S. So excited to dive into all that with you. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. Great to be here with you.
So let's start with Lowe's has been a longtime partner of the NFL, right? But more recently, as I said, getting into soccer. So why soccer? What is soccer offering that maybe some of your other sports sponsorship portfolio doesn't?
Great question. I think, the NFL, obviously, largest sport in the U.S. From a fan perspective and audience perspective. But what soccer gives us, aside of the great growth that we're seeing in the sport, is that lack of overlap in the audiences. So it's really an opportunity for us to go be in front of new audiences. And what we love about soccer is that those audiences are usually younger, more multicultural, more diverse, and they just have this passion for the sport that is very unique. And so we want to make sure that we show up for those customers in that unique aspect. Yeah. So we're excited about what it can bring for us in terms of new customer acquisition for the brand.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned the growing popularity of the sport. I think when we were chatting last, I think you told me that it's the third most popular sport in the U.S. now. Is that right?
It is. It just surpassed baseball. So it's right behind basketball. Actually, when you look at the audience, it's one of the largest, right there with the NFL. The issue is that it's so bifurcated in what people watch. A lot of people prefer the Premier League. Other people prefer the Mexico National League. So when you have that bifurcation, you truly don't have the impact that, for example, the NFL has from a unique league perspective. But I think that's changing quickly. And I think the Messi effect on the MLS is one to watch. He's already driven a lot of new fans into the sport, a lot of engagement. And when you see those stadiums fill up with 70, 80,000 people at a time, that just tells you how people are interested in the sport and want to engage with those superstars and with their teams.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's surpassed baseball, and I just saw the stats. The U.S. men's national team World Cup game against Paraguay, I think, had 28 million people watch it, which was more than Game 7 of the Dodgers Blue Jays World Series. So
that's right.
Case in point, right?
And it was the most watched soccer game for the U.S. national team, both in English and in Spanish, which is super interesting as
Back to the multicultural audiences. Exactly. Yeah. So speaking of Messi, you have a partnership with the biggest football star possible in Lionel Messi. And yet you're doing a lot more than that in soccer. Why wasn't Messi just enough? Stop there.
Well, let's just settle it here that Messi is the GOAT, and then we can talk about the rest of your question. Listen, Messi gave us credibility. He gave us an authentic way to get into the sport. But he doesn't represent everybody necessarily when you look at how the sport is evolving in the U.S. And so we knew we needed to have a whole ecosystem surrounding Messi, right? And we kind of put some guardrails about where we want it to be. And that's where the fans are watching him, right? Mm-hmm. And that helps us create more engagement, more visibility, not just on a brand level, right? So it's not just about us being on a TV commercial, but going more grassroots, going into the communities, actually participating with the fans in the sport that they're passionate about. And as I mentioned before, and you reiterated, it's such a diverse audience that we're after that it's just a great way for us to bring them into Lowe's through our loyalty program. Mm-hmm. And that's why our campaigns are all tied to our loyalty program, so that we're looking to offer our members more through Messi. And the other piece is, how do we tie this into who's actually going to drive the future of our business and the sport? And that's youth. So we are participating actively in youth soccer. Obviously, our partnership with TeamSnap is an important aspect of that participation. And we just want to see the sport grow, and we want to support the growth.
Yeah, it's interesting. We see TeamSnap has partnerships with all of the professional leagues because they're leaning heavily into their youth programs, NFL Flag, Junior NBA, MLS Go. And the reason is what you just said, is that they understand that participation drives fandom, right? Lifelong fandom. And not just, the interesting thing is not just for the athletes themselves, but for their entire families, right? And so they're really leaning in, and I think that's part of the insight that you understood as well.
Absolutely. I think if you look at the trends in how families are making decisions today, the kids have a lot of say in that, right? Mm-hmm. The brands that parents are choosing are highly influenced by what the kids are engaging with from a brand perspective. And so obviously we want to lean into that. We want to build loyalty fans of Lowe's from early on. And we do that, through partnerships like what we have with TeamSnap, where we actually show up at the tournaments, right? We become part of the community, we engage actively, and we offer them benefits. One of the great things that we have going right now, which is our Move Like Messi activation, where our kids can actually download all of these moves that Messi has done and try them themselves and learn them so that they can apply them to the game. And so that's driving a lot of engagement with the young players.
Yeah, and I know you have kids clubs and other things you're doing to really lean in, as you said, to that family aspect of your customers, right?
Absolutely, and that's all tied to our loyalty program. So again, I think the flywheel of loyalty is you bring them in, you provide the right value to them at all levels, right? To the kids, but also to the parents, and that's going to make them stick and come back to Lowe's.
Yeah. You talked about building kind of an ecosystem around soccer. And when we were chatting last week, you had a really, I'd call it bold perspective on how brands can do more than just market to soccer fans or do more than just advertise, that you think brands can actually help fuel the growth of the game, particularly in the US, and start to make the US maybe level up to that tier of kind of premium participant in soccer. Tell me more about how you see that.
Well, I think when you look at soccer internationally, it's the number one sport, of course, and you see this top tier players that are coming from all around the world, and yet the U.S. has the largest youth base of players in the whole world, and yet we're producing very few top tier players. Why is that? Right. And so I think as brands, it's not just about showing up in the moment, it's actually helping the sport. And we can do a lot more by teaming up with TeamSnap, by teaming up with, the leagues, the teams, and drive that engagement with the kids to the next level. I think we got to do a lot more of having fun for those kids than being so tactical about playing travel soccer and all those things. It's more about how you develop them to love the game for themselves. How do you ensure that they can play more often? So that they develop that creativity in the game, and that they can actually take those skills up as they move up in the chain, and hopefully go into the MLS or even beyond the MLS. So I think there's a ton of talent. It's just the pipeline and how you bring that pipeline up is what I would love to support and help change in the U.S.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned we have the biggest youth pool, and that's right. TeamSnap has over 100 sports. Anything you can think of is on TeamSnap, but the number one sport by far for youth on TeamSnap is soccer. Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting you talking about how brands can actually, by helping build that infrastructure for the youth game, can actually do much more than just, market. You can really help progress the game.
And that's a lot of what we do. Our community approach is, how do we help those players have access to the right infrastructure? How do we help those players get access to the right equipment, right? So we do some of that grassroots community activation, and that ultimately builds affinity with the brand, which then affinity drives loyalty, and loyalty drives commerce. And so it has an impact into our business, but it has an impact in the community that is just as important.
Yeah. So let's dive into that a little bit more. You've touched on some of it, activations at tournaments, sponsoring teams, but what does your youth soccer program look like on the ground? Like, what all is involved in that?
Well, we have the activations, as we mentioned, with loyalty and Move Like Messi and our kids club, but it's really about getting involved, right? And so a great example is working with Inter Miami, and how do we support underprivileged teams that don't have the opportunity to travel, that don't have access to the things that they need to actually be competitive. And together with Inter Miami, we help provide that. And so that becomes part of that ecosystem that we were talking about. We do that with the MLS through Leagues Cup as well. So it's really all about us showing up in the right moments and helping the community engage and grow within the sport. And then we bring value from Lowe's to their parents as well, and to the kids through the activities that I mentioned before.
Yeah, and our partnership at TeamSnap, I think you're sponsoring over 180 different youth soccer programs around the country this year, which is amazing. And that those sponsorship dollars, just as you said, go back into those local communities. They fund scholarships for kids who maybe otherwise couldn't play. They fund equipment, field renovations, etc., and really make a really meaningful impact.
And that's why we loved the partnership, right? Because it wasn't just about showing up with our logo. That's important for us to have, brand placement in the right places. But it was about building that community aspect that you guys started in a way that's very grassroots, and we love the approach, and we just wanted to be a part of that, right? Because that is the bigger impact that we can all generate together.
Yeah. The hard part about youth soccer, youth sports for brands to activate has always been, how do you do that at scale, right? Because it's highly, highly fragmented. You talked about soccer, even at the professional level, being fragmented. And then sports down at the youth level, there's no national association for youth sports. And so it's almost impossible for a brand to think about, I'm going to go engage with all of these local communities and all of these local clubs and leagues. And so that's what's been powerful about the network that TeamSnap has built of, 50,000 youth sports organizations across the country, is then we can partner with brands and kind of do that at scale. And again, meaningful dollars going back into the community. We've helped facilitate more than $20 million of brand sponsorships going back into local communities so far.
And you can see the impact, right? Because when we talk to the teams and the leagues that TeamSnap has impacted through these brand partnerships, they see the value, and they see how they've been able to provide all of the right things for their players in order to be able to move to the next level. So you guys are having a tremendous impact, and we're just happy to be supportive of that.
Yeah, and I think the kids think it's cool too. So we've got little soccer players all around the country this year running around, and they've got Lowe's on the front of their kit. And, it kind of makes them feel like they're big time, right? That they have a sponsor just like the pros do. And by the way, that sponsor isn't just the local pizzeria. It's a legit, big time brand who's a partner of Messi's. It's kind of fun for them.
Yeah, and the kit actually is the same that Messi wears. So it looks, they can see themselves now as seeing the GOAT playing with a Lowe's logo in his shirt, and then they can also have it in their shirts. Yeah. It's super exciting to see.
Yeah. So you mentioned, not just a logo, but something more meaningful. Although I thought you had an interesting take on that when we were chatting. I feel like I go to a lot of sports panels lately, and the kind of catchphrase from every marketer is, well, we don't just want a logo slap. But you had kind of a different take on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are talking about logo slap as something negative into what sponsorships are. I think the negative of that is if you leave it only at logo placement, right? Logo placement still plays an important role in all of the sponsorships because you want that visibility, you want frequency. So the right logo placement in the right with the right frequency actually drives that brand affinity that you want, and that's why you're paying a lot of the money for this sponsorship. So there's inherent value from a brand building perspective, but you want to take it deeper, right? So it's not just about that placement, is how do you truly participate, right? Drive participation from the fans, drive participation from the players. How do you engage again with the community? Because that's where the passion lives, is with the community. And when they see that you are actively engaged with them at that level, that creates loyalty, right? That is the trigger, not just the brand. The brand is how you become top of mind, but the engagement is really how you drive preference.
Yeah. Speaking of participation, I know one of the reasons that you leaned into youth soccer in particular right now as well is because of the World Cup happening on U.S. soil. Participation in youth soccer then grows. We've seen that in the past, right?
Actually, the last World Cup, we saw youth soccer participation grow by 30%, right after the World Cup. And we're expecting that this World Cup is going to have even a bigger impact. And listen, go Team USA, right? They're playing incredibly well. And we love seeing Christian Pulisic play as good. McKinney being just a motor in the back there, driving all of those assists. And we want to create national heroes around soccer, because when the kids start looking up to those national heroes, then they're going to be engaging actively in the sport. They want to be them, right? And so that's going to drive that participation and more importantly, have that participation stick throughout time, which is what we really want, right? We just don't want a surge in participation and then a drop. We want a surge and then stability so that the sport can continue to evolve.
Yeah, we saw that participation spike after the Women's World Cup in '99, too. You saw the same spike. So we're definitely expecting to see it this year and to see it this fall. I'm going to put you on the hot seat a minute, though. You mentioned the U.S. men's national team. So would you prefer Argentina or the U.S. men's national team to win, given you have Messi?
I want the U.S. to win. But I want Messi to win. So it's difficult. But listen, the U.S. is playing incredibly, and that first game, I was super surprised. I'm like, okay, there's a chance here and there's a path. And even if they don't make it, I know that they're going to do fantastic and it's going to lift the sport.
Yeah, for sure. So you talked about building visibility is important, but participation is also important. And one of the things I think that comes up a lot is sort of this tension between, call it performance for the brand and for the business, but then purpose, right? How do you navigate that tension? How do you make sure that you're driving community impact, but business impact as well?
I think both of those are actually complementary in our strategy. You really don't drive business impact if you're not driving impact in the community. And that's why we approach it as an ecosystem. And that's why we want to help, the passionate community be engaged, be participating in the sport and in the activations that we do, because again, that eventually is going to translate into business impact. And so we measure both, right? We measure obviously from a new to brand acquisition in terms of customers, engagement with our loyalty program, how they recur into buying at Lowe's and visiting our stores. So we have all of those hard metrics that we continue to track. But then from a brand building perspective, you're looking at, hey, did we move the needle from a preference? And that only gets driven by the impact that we have in the communities that are participating.
Yeah, we see it time and time again. So with each of the leagues that you sponsor, each of the soccer leagues, one of the things we do is we do a survey of the parents in that league, and we do it before and we do it after. And there's probably no surprise that we tend to see tremendous lift in preference and consideration and favorability, also association with like community impact. Because, you have these parents who we talk about all the sport or the passion that's in sports, which is one reason to invest in it. There's so much passion. But if you take and combine the passion of sport and then the passion you have for your kids, it's like, it's huge. And so no surprise that when the parents see a brand like Lowe's coming in and supporting their kids and supporting their kids' teams and communities, you do see, that lift.
That's exactly right, and that's what we see in our own studies. So I'm glad that they match. So you let us know how we're doing after you do the second part. But yeah, that's really it, right? You're trying to drive that affinity with the kids by helping them, which in turn their parents are going to look at, okay, this brand actually is investing in what we are interested in, right? And youth sports and obviously youth soccer has that component of you just don't drop off your kids. You're actually there with them throughout the time. So how can Lowe's show up during that journey for both the kids and the parents? And that's what's going to drive that difference in brand preference.
Yeah, especially at tournaments like you're sponsoring. So you're sponsoring soccer tournaments. And yeah, being a soccer mom myself, you're kind of stuck at those tournaments all day, right? The kids have to warm up, you're in between games. And so the activations like the Move Like Messi, where the family, the kids can come over, kind of scan a QR code, do some fun activations. You're right. You sort of have a captive audience there for that.
Yeah, and it works. It works. We love seeing all of the family interacting with those activities.
Yeah. I think that's one of the other pieces. We talked about youth sports being so fragmented historically. And so it was really hard for a brand to be able to engage at scale. The other piece is that measurement piece, right? And I think the other interesting thing we're doing as part of this program is we're actually geofencing the field locations where these sponsorships are happening. And then you can do some interesting things like even foot traffic studies and see, okay, now to your point, like let's take it all the way to commerce if we can. Are we actually driving people into stores as well? So I think that kind of stuff makes it so that youth sports now are becoming, I guess, a better opportunity for brands.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned before, when kids are engaged, they also drive that brand preference with their parents. And so you're absolutely right. Having the ability to measure that impact locally is critical because with our footprint and almost 1,800 stores around the country, we want to know that those parents are actually coming back to us, right?
Yeah. I'll pause for a minute. We've been chatting and see if there are any questions anyone has for Gerardo out there. I have another one. So this year is obviously the World Cup in the US, and then we've got a Women's World Cup coming up next year. How are you thinking about that? And just how do you think that'll continue the momentum of soccer?
Well, Women's World Cup is super important in the U.S. already because our women's national team has done such a fantastic job, right? And that has helped with girls getting into soccer and actually having those role models, those heroes that they look up to. So we believe that the Women's World Cup is just going to continue driving that momentum. And it's great that it's happening right after the World Cup was in the U.S. because that allows that sustainability that we talked about. We want to show up authentically, right? And so I'm not going to talk much about what we're going to do next because I don't want to spill the beans yet. But definitely think of Lowe's as showing up strongly during that moment as well and driving that continuity with our campaign and attracting even more customers.
Great. I've seen some of the memes that people in the U.S. in particular have said that it's like, oh, it's fun to see this men's soccer thing. It's kind of cool too, right? Which is kind of fun.
It is. And I think this U.S. men's national team has the opportunity to change that tide as well.
I agree. So if we have marketers, Brand Innovators draws a lot of marketers, and we have marketers in the crowd. And if you were talking to a marketer who said they just don't feel like at the youth level, at the grassroots level, it's big enough to make an impact, how would you counsel them or respond to that?
I think, a lot of CMOs may be attracted to the big moments, the big brand placements on TV and whatnot, which again, we are doing that as well. But you got to think grassroots. You got to build a full ecosystem that's touching the consumer in all of the touch points possible. And one of those is where they're participating, right? And so looking for opportunities like what we found with you, with TeamSnap, to actually drive that scale at the community level, at the grassroots level, that's really what closes the cycle in that ecosystem. So I would encourage everybody to just think about the whole funnel, the whole journey of a fan and a customer before just determining that being at the upper funnel is the only place where you want to show up.
Yeah, and this panel session was titled Beyond the Moment too. I think the other compelling thing is, okay, the big cultural sports moments drive incredible excitement, cultural relevance, awareness. But then it's like, okay, how do you carry that on after the final whistle too? And I think that's the other thing about your strategy around the ecosystem is, yes, you benefit from those big moments, but it doesn't end there.
Yeah, the big moments continue to be incredibly relevant, right? And you want to be there. And obviously, budgets aside, you want to have the opportunity to show up as best as you can as a brand. But how do you then engage beyond the big moment and stay on through leveraging that ecosystem that you've built? That's really what's going to drive that affinity with your brand in the long run, right? It can't be just a one shot and done. You have to be there constantly showing up in the right moments, because the big moments matter, but the small moments matter just as much. And so when you build that ecosystem, when you're participating on the community level, when you're engaging with the fans in an authentic way, then they're going to see your brand over time be part of the sport. And that's really when you become endemic to the sport, and when fans are obviously recognizing your brand and saying, this is a brand that we trust because they show up where it matters to us.
Yeah, I love that. I love the thought of becoming endemic to the sport because you're a part of it at every level, not just showing up in those big moments, right? And then when you do show up in the big moments, you've earned the right to be there and you have an authenticity that you've built, right?
Exactly. And that authenticity is super important, right? You want to show up in a way that is authentic to the sport, but it's also authentic to your brand. Right. So there's got to be enough insights there that connect your brand to what the sport is all about and what people are passionate about in order to drive that impact that you're mentioning.
Yeah, I also love you talking about the small moments. We say at TeamSnap a lot, we say that every Saturday is Super Bowl Sunday just at some local field around the country. Like all those small moments are big moments to those kids and those families and those parents, right?
100%. Winning a championship for those kids is like winning the Super Bowl. It's like winning the World Cup, right? So you want to be there as well. It's important. That's really what builds that community. That's really what builds a passion for the sport and takes those kids forward. And also, the parents are super engaged. I'm a very passionate soccer dad. I may scream too much and get called out by the coach many times. But you know what? That is the beauty of it. And when you see brands that are supporting those moments for you, those are the brands that matter.
Yeah. I had a coach once who carried lollipops in his coach bag, and he would just walk up to a parent like you and hand you a lollipop, and that was your signal that it was time to dial it down. It's pretty good, right?
I would probably be overweight with all those lollipops.
So they gave us a little extra time here on this panel. So I'm gonna throw a question at you because we have you here and you've done so much in sports marketing. So whether it's soccer or not, if you look ahead, several years, 5 years, what do you think is going to be different in sports marketing?
Listen, sports marketing, I think, continues to be the one point of live connection to programming, right? So think about streaming today. You can pause anything, you can come back to it or not if you don't like to, but live sports actually gives you one shot at watching the game in real time and share that moment and share those emotions with your family, with your friends. It becomes multi-generational. And I don't think there are many things that can change that. So I'm inspired by the future of sports because it's that one unifying moment that brings people together. Right. So I love the fact that continues to be something that we want to lean in as sports marketers, and hopefully everybody's looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah, that's great. I was just thinking about the unifying moment of when everyone, no matter what your opinions or differences, everyone's cheering for the same team in those moments. So
that's right, or not. But you may be cheering for opposite teams, but you still enjoy the moment together, and that's important. Yeah. Putting those differences aside and just enjoying the game.
Yeah. Okay, I'll pause again. Any other questions for Gerardo before we wrap up here?
So are you planning to, right now, is it just youth soccer that you're partnering with? Are you planning to go into other sports as well?
We currently have a partnership with the NFL. We partner with several NFL teams and players. We recently got into basketball. So we partnered with Jalen Brunson. We knew he was going to win it all. So we took Jalen in, but also Aja Wilson. And it's just been a fantastic partnership. And we want to continue being more diverse in how we approach sports. But as a marketer, I need to be conscious that I can't just put money all over the place. It's got to have a purpose, and that purpose is how do I get to new audiences that I am not reaching with my current partnerships. And so as we evaluate new partnerships, it's always about, can I get additional reach and not just hit the same people over and over again? So we've been very strategic in how we do it. A great example, again, with basketball is the fact that we leaned into more of a social first campaign because we know that the consumers of basketball today are very social media engaged, and that's proven right with our campaign. So we'll continue to look at all of those insights and ways to reach the customers, especially new customers to the brand.
As you deep dive into more sports, I guess the question you have from your CFO is, okay, show me the money. So what are the typical measurements and metrics that you're putting in place to measure ROI?
So a great question. And I know that is the one question that everybody gets asked, especially because of the price tag on some of these partnerships. But listen, this is where, as a company, we've gotten very creative, and we are not only tying this to just customer acquisition, right? We want to see the journey of that customer over time at Lowe's and what they're engaging with. But if you think about it, and as I mentioned before, soccer is all about loyalty for us. Once we bring those customers into our loyalty program, we can actually know person by person how engaged they are with Lowe's, either online or coming into our stores, and how much their sales individually have grown. And so we have special ways to tag all of those acquisitions to actually see the impact. But I've taken that step further, right? I just don't want to look at this from a 5-year perspective and try to sell this into my company. So we've gotten into licensed products sales to drive more immediate impact, but also help with that loyalty acquisition. We make those products that are viral in nature, that are limited in quantities, and we tie that to our loyalty program. So we know who's buying it, and now we can actually tag those loyalty customers as sports fans of a particular sport. And that enables us to retarget them and to bring them back and shop more with us. So we have a full flywheel to truly drive impact for the business in the short and in the long term.
The 10-foot Messies are what come to mind for me when you talk about those limited items.
100%. That's it, right?
Yeah.
We created a special 10-foot Messi inflatable that we sold to our loyalty members.
Awesome. Well, a couple takeaways from our discussion from me. One, the biggest moments in sports absolutely still matter, but building lasting brand impact means building a whole ecosystem, right?
Right.
And getting into relationships and communities and participation and experiences on the ground, which I think is super aligned with the Lowe's brand and the Lowe's positioning as helpful, because you're really helping grow the sport, not just advertising to fans of the sport, but building that fandom from the ground up. So thank you for joining us today. Gerardo, it's great to have you, and thanks for your partnership.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everyone.